Wow. My name is Craig, and I'm an alcoholic. And I am overwhelmed. 40th AA anniversary, Prescott Shoestring Roundup. Right on. I've been to at least 30 of these, and probably 35. I know there's people in the room that have been more. I know John's been here more, John E. And it's an honor and a privilege to be here. And I heard a wise man say not too long ago, and a responsibility. And I'm honored to be able to have that responsibility tonight. I'd like to share a couple of my experiences with some of the former roundups here. As many of you know, we were out at Emmanuel Pines for, I think, about 20 years. And they'd have a volleyball tournament there. And for like 10 years, I mean, I was a lot leaner. My hair was darker. I had more hair. And I was somewhat athletic. And I would always handpick my team, and I knew I was going to come up here and win. And for 10 years in a row, we came up here and got our ass kicked. The 11th year I come up, I don't know what happened, but I was late, and I come up here, and they put me with the Misfits. And it just so happens we won that year. We won, and then I come back the following year, and they were giving trophies for the winner. Well, we didn't get a trophy, so I got one of my first resentments. Actually, Mike wanted me to remind everybody. I had Mike come down and speak for me at a place down in Phoenix, and I introduced him. I knew he didn't know this, but early on, I was up here at one of the roundups, and Mike was sharing, and he had like 3 or 4 years, and I got a hell of a resentment over that. And I thought, why ain't I up there? But anyway, so that's how I introduced him. But one of the other stories was we were out at Emmanuel Pines again, and we were going to play volleyball, and so I had breakfast, and I was going to do a quick 30-minute out and 30-minute back, just hike, exercise. And I did 30 minutes out, and I found this perfect chair in the rocks, and it was in the sun, and I just sit down, it's sort of a mountaintop, and I was meditating. And I got up, and I took one step, and there's a rattlesnake, and I took another step, and there's another rattlesnake, and I did a tap dance out of there, and then I forgot which way I had come in. But I knew I was only in 30 minutes. So, and let me tell you, I was born and raised in Wyoming, okay? I'm a hunter, a fisherman. I don't get lost in the woods. But I was lost. So I picked 45 minutes. I walked this line and keep nothing. 43 minutes into the 45-minute hike, I come across this kid. He's living in his BMW. He spent his last money on a 6-pack of beer, and he has a P.O. box so he can get a check, and he's got a membership at the Y so he can take a shower. But he's not an alcoholic. But anyways, he got me back to camp, and I was, very relieved from that. I got very fond memories of Prescott. This was the second roundup I ever came to. Flagstaff was the first in 1987, and Johnny H. and Sister B. spoke at the Flagstaff roundup, and then I come to this roundup, and Johnny H. and Sister B. are sharing. And then actually even that year at state convention, I thought they were the only speakers in Alcoholics Anonymous, So, my mom and dad lived here for a long time, so I've been coming up here all these years. My dad's passed, my mom's still here. She's 91 and doing well. My wife here, my better half, we've been gone I feel like I've been living out of a suitcase for the last month. We were fortunate to go to the International and, had a great time up there. I can tell you I was a little scared going up there. I got a felony 45 years ago, and I didn't do any of the stuff they said to do before you go, but then as it got closer, there was a lot of people saying, you got to do a lot of stuff. And plus we had prepaid a trip, one of my bucket list trips, to do the Rocky Mountain Rail up through the Canadian Rockies. And anyways, we get up there and we get to the border and the inspection, and then Noreen's passport is breaking the machine. So then we got to go over and manually, and still my heart, it's amazing. In 38 years, I haven't even had a speeding ticket. But I can tell you, it was like I was right back there, and I felt like I was a criminal. But anyways, we sailed through and everything went well. It was Noreen's first international. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. And I'm trying to say some of the good things in the front, because sometimes I get into my story and forget to tell everybody how good my life is. You know, I have a great life. We've traveled the world, and everywhere we go to Alcoholics Anonymous. We've been overseas many times, you know, in Italy and Switzerland and different places. And everywhere we go to Alcoholics Anonymous. And sometimes I don't even know the language, but I can feel it. I don't necessarily understand it, but I can feel it. And I can tell you, my dad that I got to spend 30 years with, you know, when I first got here, I was trying to figure out how to buy life insurance on my dad, because I just knew he was going to die. I was going to have to pay all the bills. And, you know, I got to hold his hand as he passed, and, you know, it was as good as it could be. We were up in Salt Lake. We went to see Kneecap concert. If anybody heard, that's an Irish rap band. And then we also went to see the Mormon Tabernacle Choir to sort of even it out, you know. And at the same time, well, we did some stuff at Park City, and I was able to go up and put another chip on my brother's grave, and I'll get into that in a bit. But it's just, I live a blessed life today, and everything that I have, everything that I am, is a result of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have a lot of friends here. Some people, I guess, came from another city or another state even. Hope you're not disappointed. And it's just, you know, I'm impressed. So I was born and raised in Wyoming, and had a mom and a dad, had 4 brothers and a sister. I knew where mom and dad was at. You know, no big deals. Went through school pretty much unscathed. You know, got in trouble a little bit for taking them little airline bottles of booze to school. They sort of frown on that. And the left-handed cigarettes, they didn't like those. And I got in trouble a couple times, but never more than a slap on the wrist. I got, in my junior year, I had this girlfriend, and she was a cheerleader. And I was, back then we had jocks and socias and heads, you know. And I was a head, believe it or not. I had a full head of hair. They called me Goldilocks. And, but my other half was this cheerleading girlfriend. And anyways, I was going to take her to this concert. And I'd gotten in trouble. Parents said I was grounded. And I said, well, just do what you got to do afterwards, or beat me, or do it, but I'm going to the concert. They said, no, you're not. So I ran away that night. I left them know, leave me alone. I'll finish school. And anyways, went to the concert, and I knew they'd be there, so I was in a car out in the parking lot, way down. I had the rear view mirror on the front door, and I had a fifth of Jack Daniels and 100 lot of them White Crosses. And, you know, that's going way back. Terrible stuff. And anyways, they left, and then we went in, and I don't even remember the concert. It was REO Speedwagon, by the way. So I don't know. Some of you may remember that. I was 3-4 years sober before my dad reminded me. I also got fired from my job that night too for going to that. But so about 2 weeks after that, my parents and my other siblings they moved. they moved out of town, and I thought, oh, wow. Because I ran away 2 blocks up and staying with my friend, right? So they moved, and I thought, oh, I guess this is for real. And, I'd go to school, and I had this little job, and they came to my graduation. I didn't invite them, but they came, and they asked me if I wanted to move back home, and I said, sure, why not? And so I moved to an even smaller town in Wyoming, Green River, Wyoming. Anybody ever hear of that? There's usually a couple, but let me tell you, it was like 3,000 people, 3,500. It's my kind of town. It's a drinking town. It's a mining town, oil-filled town, railroad town. Everybody works shift work. This is in the 70s. You can drink booze walking down the street, in your car. You can order mixed drinks out the window. You can drink at 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. and nobody will look at you twice, And like I said, it's my kind of town. I got a job on the railroad, making good money. I was making $500 a week in the 70s. That was good money. Some places it's not bad today. And I would get paid on Friday, and on Monday I would be borrowing lunch money. And I didn't buy many drinks either, by the way. My mom and dad owned a bar. I recommend that if you're alcoholic. I drank top shelf booze as much as I wanted, as often as I wanted. And that helped me get here at least 10 years quicker. At least 10 years quicker, So what we do in Wyoming is when we party, we go to somebody else's place, somebody else's town. And we do that because there's nothing going on in our town, right? So I finally buy a new truck. I got a new truck. My brother and his girlfriend, another guy, we go up there, and we go to another town and we get drunk. And it's Christmas time. It's cold. It's snowing, and we're coming back, and I come to on a gurney, and with my parents to my left and the cops to my right, and they told me my brother didn't make it. I was 20 years old. My brother was 18. And I just couldn't believe it. You hear about that, you read about it, you see it, but it doesn't happen to you. And I immediately, something said to me, alcohol killed my brother Carl, and it will kill me too. So let me tell you, this is in 1977 in Wyoming, and nobody else got hurt. Well, we got hurt some, but nobody else died. And so I immediately said I hurt when I didn't hurt. They gave me a shot of something. And but what I said to myself is I'm going to drink and drive, and I'm going to die. Because as sober as I'm up here tonight, I could have put a gun to my head and pulled the trigger, and it would have been easy. I really feel. But I couldn't put my parents or my other brothers or my sisters through any more pain, so that was my solution. So from 1977 to 1987, I drank as much as I could, as often as I could. And this accident doesn't make me an alcoholic. I was alcoholic way before this terrible accident. But let me tell you, it was like pouring gasoline on a fire, and it was on. The drinking, there was no more drinking for fun. There was always more parties, but it was not a party to me. I drank for blackout or to pass out. I drank to shut this off because even though alcohol caused what I had done, alcohol was the only thing that would turn this off for a little while. Even if it was for 12 minutes or 12 seconds or whatever it was worth it. It was worth it. But I paid for every drink I ever took. And I tell you, I was very fortunate. Mom and Dad was fairly affluent. They paid for me to see lots of doctors. Seen lots of psychiatrists, lots of sociologists, lots of therapists, lots of counselors. They would give me pills, and they say, take these pills and don't drink. I'm alcoholic. If you say don't drink, that means drink. So now I'm taking pills and drinking, and I can't wake up. I just can't. I sleep like 15, 16 hours a day, and I'm taking the pills, and I'm dumping like half out. I'm trying to get the measurement right, and I just couldn't do it. I remember I went back to the doctor, and I told him, your pills don't work, but my whiskey does. Because I can tell you, when I take a bottle of bourbon, and I hold it up, and I take 3-4 healthy swigs, I can breathe. And here's the commercial for Alcoholics Anonymous. The purpose of Alcoholics Anonymous is to do very slowly, what that bourbon did for me instantly, and I've gotten that. I've gotten that and much, much more. If that's all I got, I've been overpaid. But so I got that, and so the alcohol worked for a long time. And that's the other thing in Alcoholics Anonymous. What I didn't get was, because they talk about quitting drinking, and you come to AA, if quitting drinking is the answer, then when I quit drinking, then my life should get better. But that never happened. I tried that many times before I ever got here. I would go to my brother's grave and swear on my brother's grave, and with every fiber in my being, that I'm not going to drink, I'm going to make something of myself, and I'd go down the hill, and I'd be drunk the same day. Sometimes 2, never more than 3 days could I stay sober. And that's doing everything in me, doing the best I could do to quit, and I couldn't. And what I didn't understand till later on, and everything I say up here is as a result of being here. I've been here 38 years, okay? And so it didn't take me that long to get it, but it just, in reflection, the reflecting of what alcoholism is. And so what I didn't understand was, when I quit for 3 days, I wasn't even totally detoxed from alcohol. So I had never really quit. It takes at least 10 days to detox from alcohol, and that's if you're just drinking alcohol, if you're not mixing any drugs with it, and I did some of them left-handed cigarettes. I did left-handed cigarettes for every day for a year in my junior year, and I never liked it. The only reason I did it was because my friends did it, and I thought if I didn't do it, they would think I was a narc, Now, I thought when I smoked that, I thought I was a psychiatrist, because I would sit on a couch, and I'd look at you, and I thought I knew what you were all thinking, and then you get that little roach, and you got to pass it, and I was always real nervous, and I'd always shake when I had to pass it to the girls, and I didn't like that feeling. So then what I have to do after I'd done that, now I got to drink. Because let me tell you, drinking is a different feeling than that stuff. And that's the reason you hear about drunks and about us in the newspaper and about what goes on, is because we don't sit on the couch and eat bonbons, I want to get up, I want to drive, I want to go somewhere, I want to be somebody. I can tell you, not too long after my accident, my boss came to me, and I was on the front page of the paper, and he says, "Is this you?" I said, No, that ain't me. Lied straight. And so the following week, the big boss came, and he said, "Craig, we frown on what happened and what you did, and you can either resign or be fired." And I said, "Well, I always wanted to go back to school, So, but I gave up I didn't give it up, but I lost a great job on the railroad at a very young age. So alcoholism was alive and well in my life way before I even knew what it was. I never even heard the word alcoholic until I was 26. And so I did a geographic down here to Arizona, and a friend of mine was going to school, so I thought, well, I'd go to school, and I enrolled in school. But it took me about 2 weeks, to find my people, and I can go on and on, but and I know what happens to alcoholics. The alcohol quits working. And alcohol quits working maybe at a different time for all of us, but for me, it was 10 years. And now the alcohol quit working, so now I am going to kill myself because I can't live with what I've done. I can't live with what's happened. And so I'm going to finish it. And so I'm sort of an academic, and I'm going to come into AA, and not because of anything, not because I'm alcoholic, not because it works, just because I want to check it off the list. And so I can say I tried everything. And I came into these rooms, and I came drunk. I couldn't come sober. I looked at my shoes, and I came late, and I left early. And I tell you, I came to a meeting on a Monday night. It was about 300 men strong, and there's a guy from podium like I am tonight. His name was Craig also. He was sharing from the podium. He said he was drinking, he was driving, his brother died, and he was sober. And I heard that like he was shouting at me through a bullhorn, and I was in the back row. And what I knew, he took away my terminal uniqueness. He made it okay for me to come. He saved my life. I've never seen that man again. Never. And I've had people on the east side tell me that, he exists, but I never ran into the guy. I was never able to thank him. But did I get sober that night, that week, that year? No, I didn't. And then another reason I didn't, because I knew you guys were very serious about this not drinking. I mean, you said none, zero. They said the first drink gets you drunk. And I thought, guys, a bunch of lightweights. I can drink a fifth and go out and drink another fifth. When I got done, that much in a styrofoam cup would make me stupid drunk twice in one day, to where I couldn't even lift my head up straight. And I was 29 years old, and I did a stint just before that. And I came in at 26 I was doing window shopping is what I call it, just to see, just in case I might need this. I came here, and I came to the old Saguaro Club in Sunny Slope. Anybody ever been there? Anyways, that place is a shithole. I mean. I had to duck to walk in there, and I'm not very tall. The fans were about ready to fall off the ceiling. The smoke was 6 foot thick, and some old man, probably about as old as I am now, said, "If you want what we got, you'll go to any length to get it." And I thought, God, I got more than you'll ever have, and I don't need it. And then there was actually a younger gal in there, and they were giving her cake for 1 year. And I said, wasn't that great? They give her a cake for not drinking on the weekends or not drinking during the week. And they said, no, Craig, she didn't drink for the whole year. I didn't believe it. I could not wrap my mind around that. And then there was another guy next to my left. He had tried to commit suicide. So I thought, well, I'm going to help him. So I gave him my number. He gave me his number. I would call him, call his wife, tell her what was wrong with him. I was like trying to teach. I was sick. Okay, I was really sick. And I heard all this in my first meeting. And then there was this gal. She said, Craig, you're going to have to step over some dead ones before you get this program. And I thought, man, she's a cold-hearted witch. And she was right. My second year of sobriety, I was pallbearer twice in my first 2 years of sobriety. And the second kid was 25 years old. and he died of liver failure and hepatitis C, and it scared me, and it woke me up, and Gordy took me to the funeral, and he made me touch the body, and he said, that's untreated alcoholism, and it will kill you, and it will kill me. You know, you can die of it or with it, you know. So, anyways, that was my first stint. I did 90 days, and my brother was coming in town. I decided I'm going to just go out for the weekend. I'm going to come back because I got a commitment to the Unity Day picnic and on Monday, and I crawled back in 2 years and 8 months later. And the only reason I know that is because the guy gave me a big book. Gave me a big book for unlocking his car at Swore Club. He'd locked his keys in. I was surprised that so many alcoholics didn't know how to break into a car, you know. But so anyways, for breaking into his car, he gave me a big book. And and that's the only reason I know the date, 2 years and 8 months. And thank God I made it back. I know a lot of us don't. This is a gift of God. This is the grace of God. And I come walking up the walkway, and Gordy was there to greet me, and he remembered my name, and said, welcome back. And so then I'm like, okay, I'm all in, let's do this, and I asked him to sponsor me. He said, well, we're gonna go to coffee, and then we'll talk, and then if you still want me to, we'll do that. And we used to always go to the Village Inn and just eat pie and eat cake and drink and laugh and tell jokes and tell lies. But this time when we went, he took me to the booth over in the corner, and he just started reading me the riot act. And he said, you know, you're going to call me every day. You're going to go to a meeting every day. You're going to read a page of the big book every day. The meetings you go to, you're going to sit in the front 2 rows. You're not going to talk to women. You're not going to get women's phone numbers. You're not going to get up and get coffee. You're not going to get up and go to the bathroom. You know, he said, oh, you're not going to talk in a meeting. He said, we're talking about recovery, Craig, and you don't have any. He hurt my feelings a lot. You know, and I thought, geez. He said, if you're called on, he says, you can state your name and your disease. And he said, you're not to talk for a year. And I thought, wow. So I said, Gordy, I said, I'm pretty smart. I'm damn near genius. I got a bachelor's in computer science. He says, really? He says, you know, he says, there are degrees on a thermometer. You know where they stick those? You know? He really hurt my feelings, you know? And he was always a step ahead of me. He said, let's get this right. You're 29 years old. You're living with Daddy. You're about ready to lose your job. You know, I'm like, how's he know this stuff? You know? But he knew, he was nosy. He was very nosy. He wanted to know everything about me. He wanted to know about how much I made. He wanted to know how much was in my bank. And I told him the truth. And then he wanted to know what was in my refrigerator. He wanted to know what was in my medicine cabinet. He came over to my house, and he de-alcoholized my house. He took out the Grey Poupon and the vanilla extract. He threw out my Cepacol mouthwash. I didn't even know that stuff had alcohol in it. And then with the money deal, because I owed money, I mean, I don't know any alcoholics that get here on the winning streak, and because I said, well, I'll just save it up, and then when I get the amount I owe him, I'll just pay. No, Craig. He said, you're going to fill out a check every month. You're going to send it every month. It was $128 a month. It took me 7 years to pay off my financial amends. And I'll tell you, when I made my final one, I mean, I never felt so free in my life. You know, the other thing, when he said I couldn't speak at a meeting, like I said, I didn't understand what he was doing, but he said, you're just doing a dress rehearsal sitting in the meeting. You're sitting about what you're thinking about what you're going to say when you get called on. You're worried about how you're going to look when you say it. You're concerned. You're so consumed about what's in your head, you're not listening to the speaker. And thank God he did that. It saved my life. It allowed me to listen to what was going on in the rooms. It allowed me to listen to learn and learn to listen. Because I still get anxious, but and he gave me that for a year. And then he said, in the coffee, he said, you got to have a home group and you got to have a position. And he said, you're gonna make coffee. And again, I said, well, you know, I got a little bit of education. I should probably have a position. He said, you're gonna make coffee for a year. I said, okay. So then I made coffee, and Maryville had decaf coffee. I don't want my whiskey watered down. I don't want my coffee watered down. I don't want my AA watered down. So I made regular coffee. And they got a little upset. They said, well, we got to have a business meeting. And this one I sort of felt I tied because they said, well, you can make decaf and regular. And I'm like, right on. And so, but anyways, a year comes up, and then they say, you got to give the keys. I didn't want to give up my position, because now nobody else can set the chairs as good as me. Nobody can make the coffee as good as me, you know. And now now you're secretary, you know. Now I'm secretary. And anyway, so now I'm coming up on 18 months. The 18-month chip came out in 1988, at least in Arizona it did. And me and my buddy Rodney, we were both getting 18-month chips, so I go and I buy 2 18-month chips, and I go back to the group, and that night I presented us each with a chip. And they said, well, Craig, Maryville doesn't give 18-month chips. And I said, well, they do now. And they said, no. They said, well, we got to have a meeting. I hate these meetings. And this one I lost. No, that's a whiner's chip. We're not giving it out. I got to tell you, I call it a whiner's chip today. But I had a resentment. I mean, it was 5, 6, 7 years before I put money back in that basket for those chips. I was so pissed off, you know. But I just kept doing this deal. I kept doing it. A couple of things. Oh, the other thing Gordy said, he said, you're going to ask for help. And I said, no. I said, I don't believe in this God stuff. He said, I didn't ask you to believe. He says, you're just going to do the lip service. You're going to ask for help in the morning. If you don't drink at night, you're going to thank him at night. I went home that night with my 5 days of sobriety. I'm home alone. I close the door. I get on my knees, and I say a prayer. I say, God, whoever you are, whatever you are, if you're out there, please help me. I'd rather die than go on living the way I've been living. Something happened in that room. I felt warm. I felt comfortable. God didn't talk to me, but I just knew if I didn't drink, everything was going to be all right. That thought did not come from my mind. Not drinking was never my answer, ever, never, ever. Drinking was my answer all the time, every time. You know, I drink. If I feel great, I drink. If I feel bad, I drink. If I don't feel in between, I drink. And if I don't feel at all, I drink. That's what I do. But, and then the other thing that happened, the other miracle out of that was I went to a meeting again the next day. And I don't know what you guys had, but you guys had something I wanted that I don't know if I ever had. You had a sparkle in your eye, you had a spring in your step, and I wanted what you had. I still wasn't buying, even though I had that great experience, I still wasn't, up here talking about God or believing in God. And matter of fact, the prayer, I wasn't crazy about the prayer, and I shake a lot, and I have anxiety, and I'd leave the meeting. I'd go to the restroom during the prayer, and my sponsor would catch me, and he said, "No, you stay and say the prayer." And then another thing on the identification, they allowed me, I think, for 3 days, because when I came here, there were alcoholic addicts, but not as many, or at least it didn't seem. And so I thought it sounded a little edgier. It's sort of like, I'm an alcoholic addict, I'll see your alcoholism and I'll raise you one, I'm gonna be just a little bad or whatever, I'm just a punk. But like on about the third day, I remember this guy, John Frio. He's probably my age now. I'm 29 years old. And this guy is thumping me in the chest. And I'm like, I'm going to kill him. And he says, "Craig, we identify as an alcoholic in an AA meeting. And if you go to different meetings, CA, NA, whatever, different meeting, you identify as addict, that's fine. But here, we don't care about ANDAs." They'd say, matter of fact, if it's ANDA, it's $2. Otherwise it's only $1. But, but they got my attention. Oh, the other thing he said was, when you say ANDA, you hear this loud clap. He goes, "You know what that is?" I said, "No." He goes, "That's all the old timers' minds shutting, because they ain't gonna hear a word you say, And but they got my attention. He told me to buy a suit. And it wasn't for going on interviews. It was for going on to funerals, and we went to a lot of funerals. I used to, when I'd go to a funeral, I'd say, "Well, why them? Why them? Why not me?" And well, they didn't get this. And well, no, the truth is, for a long time I thought I was doing this because I was doing it. Because I'm not drinking. I'm not drinking because I'm not drinking, and good for me, But I know that's not true. I mean, I buried a lot of people smarter than me, younger than me, more money than me, and I don't ask why anymore. I don't know why I get this and some others don't. But what I know is nothing is wasted in Alcoholics Anonymous. Nothing is wasted here. When somebody dies, there's going to be some people that are going to walk in a little further in. They're going to sit all the way down, and they're going to say, I don't want that to be me. And I venture to say probably everybody in this room knows somebody that's died from this disease. And if you haven't, you just stay here. You don't have to stay here very long, and you will. Unfortunately, because it's a progressive fatal illness. I started doing a lot of PICPC work and a lot of H&I work in the prisons. I did a lot of schools. I'll tell you a couple of the schools, and one was, a fifth grade class. And this young boy, after I'm done talking and telling a little bit about Alcoholics Anonymous, this kid, he asked me, he goes, "How do I keep my dad from hitting me?" How do you answer that? I spoke at a lot of places, and I got a lot of questions that were like that and worse. And I come to believe that these weren't the ones that were out of the ordinary. I mean, it was rampant. It was rampant everywhere. I did jails for a little while. The jails I didn't care for as much because most of the guys in there just want to get out of their cell and smoke cigarettes and talk smack in the back of the room. But so then I told my sponsor, I said, "Well, I want to go where I have a captive audience." And he said, "Well, we're going to prison, And so I got badged, and I tell you, you get badged to go to prison. You it's a commitment. okay? So, and when you do it, save your paperwork, because they're going to lose it at least the first time, and probably the second, and probably the third, and your fingerprints, and, you know, and what I have to get to is that I'm not doing this for the system. I'm doing it for the inmate, you know. So I got badged, and I started doing the meetings, and I'd take a lot of meetings out to Perryville when it was a men's facility. And I was sitting down with the man, Rocky. Rocky was doing 10 years flat for double vehicular manslaughter that he didn't remember. And when he said that, he leveled me. He humbled me. I realized I should be wearing orange. I should be sitting in that seat, and I should have done time, you know. And I can tell you, when I did meetings from there on out, and I did Perryville for 10 years, Lewis probably another seven years. But when I was out there, I quit so much because in the beginning I did so much out of arrogance and pride and ego rather than just sharing my story, you know, because I got this horrific story and I'm going to sober up all these guys. Well, you can't preach to an alcoholic. You can't preach to an alcoholic. You can't scare an alcoholic. You can't threaten an alcoholic. All we can do is share our experience, strength, and hope. And if they hear it, they hear it. And so when I went out to Lewis, this is now they're making these guys come in. They're making you take attendance. And I said, well, I'm not going to take attendance. I said, this is a volunteer program. So you guys don't want to be here, just go on out. I'll sign your jackets. And so I think I had 20 guys in there, maybe 21. I think 18 of them left. And I was like, oh, shit. So now, but anyways, I stuck to my word, and I kept going, and I kept, you know, reading the book and talking. And you know what? They all came back in. Now, I don't know if every single one, but a lot of them came back in. And so it worked. You know, it worked. And those guys out there one Christmas Eve I was there, they got me a piece of pumpkin pie. Now, I don't know how you get a piece of pumpkin pie from where they did, but I tell you, it was one of the best. It tasted great. It was one of the best pumpkin pies I ever had. I would come out of there grateful to tears when the bars clanged behind me. I was just, you know, I was able to go home, sleep where I wanted, you know, eat what I wanted, do what I wanted, and you know, I just got to where, you know, what it's like to be locked up. I was locked up here for a long time, you know. I was going to a meeting one night at 2121, and a guy taps me on the shoulder before I'm going in. He says, I want to talk to you after the meeting. And I'm thinking, oh boy, do I owe him an amends? Did I sleep with his wife? And he comes up to me after the meeting. He goes, you don't remember me, do you? And I said, no, I don't. He said, the last time you see me, he goes, I was wearing orange. He goes, I want to tell you that I got a job, and I'm married, and I'm sober because of you. Now, you can't buy a drug that'll get you that high. You can't drink enough whiskey that'll get you. That is what I've been looking for my whole life. And that's what we get here. That's what we get here, working one-on-one with the new alcoholic and seeing the lights come on. I remember telling Gordy when I finally got this God deal, I finally got the God shot, and I really believe in God now, and I know it's God, and it's working. But I said, Gordy, we shouldn't talk about God too much because we're going to scare away the newcomer. He said, Craig, let me tell you something. If there's a newcomer that doesn't want to be here, there ain't nothing you can say to keep him out of here. If there's a newcomer that wants to be here, there ain't nothing you can say to run him out of here. So he says, when you want to speak about your God, your higher power, he says, you feel free. And so I do that today. You know, how am I doing on time? But Like I said, everything I have in Alcoholics Anonymous is, everything I have in my life is because of Alcoholics Anonymous. I retired a couple of years ago. I was able to retire in my field, in the IT field. I tell you, for a short stint in between there, I was like 17 years sober, and I lost my job. I lost this big, high-paying job, yada, yada, and I was devastated, and I was scared to death, and okay, but anyways, so I thought, well, I'll just take a year off, and then I'll get a government job, yada. So, but what happened was I couldn't get a job. I started applying, couldn't get back in, so I took a job at Costco, okay? And now, nothing against Costco, great company, but I'm pushing carts, and I'm under my breath, I gotta be the most educated cart pusher they got, blah, 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 blah. And anyways, 2 weeks after I had that job, I got a job back in my field and was able to retire in it. So anyways, I'm getting the credit. I have been grossly overpaid. I live a charmed life because I was a pig, because I drank as much as I could, as often as I could. I have, as far as I know, restored every relationship there is to restore. I have a great relationship with my family. Oh, and real quick, my wife's daughter has 68 days today in treatment. I know some of you pray, and if you'd say a prayer for her, her name is Hannah. I thank God for AA. I thank you people for showing me my God. Thank you.